memorial was in its 8th month, and the flowers were still coming. Not many. A jar on the harbor wall changed every week or so. A card in the church porch with Sean's photograph on it, the one from the boat, squinting into the sun with his hand up. Clara Vance walked past both of them every day on her way to 8 o'clock Mass, and she had not once stopped at either. Afterwards, Bridie Gallagher caught her at the door and took her arm, and that was that. And they sat in Bridie's kitchen with the window running wet, while Bridie talked about the roof. Bridie talked about the roof now the way other people talked about weather. The timbers were gone at the north end. The Heritage Board had been out in February and gone up with a torch and come down again looking grim. 12,000, Bridie said. Matched. All we've to do is show the 4 we've got and they hand it over. And if it rains before November, then 80 pensioners have nowhere warm on a Tuesday and Deirdre's food parcels go out of the back of a van. Bridie topped up the tea, so it won't rain before November. Clara went home at 9:30. Her cottage was 2 rooms and a scullery, and the heater clicked off at 10, whether she was in bed or not. On the table, there was a tin box that had once held biscuits. Inside it, a folded death notice, a set of rosary beads that had been her mother's, and a small blue enamel medal on a broken cord. St. Christopher, the blue gone chalky at the edges from 24 years of being worn against skin. They'd given it to her at the hospital in a paper envelope with his watch. Clara took it out and held it in her palm, face up, the way she did most nights. She looked at the blue. She did not turn it over. She had not turned it over once in 8 months. Before this story goes any further, this channel tells stories about the most dangerous person in the room, the one nobody noticed. Subscribe now, because once you see how these people think, you will never look at power the same way again. The gutting shed opened at 5, and Roisin Cleary was always there at 10 to. Steel table, rubber apron, water running. 400 fish in a shift got you £8.50 an hour, and nobody said anything to you. Your hands went numb by 7. Nuala worked the table beside her. You've not eaten. I have. You've not. Nuala put half a sandwich in the pocket of Roisin's apron without looking up from her fish. Eat that or I'll tell your mother. My mother's in Coventry. Then I'll ring her. After the shift, Roisin walked home along the front rather than the top road, because on the top road you passed the tea shop. 3 women outside it. One of them Bridie Gallagher. Bridie turned her head away. That was all. No word, no gesture. She turned her head at the correct moment, so that when Roisin passed there was nothing to pass. The other 2 copied her half a second late. Back at the caravan, she put the immersion on for 20 minutes, because 20 minutes was what she allowed herself, and sat on the bed in her coat while the water heated. The letter was in the inside pocket of that coat. It had been in the inside pocket of that coat since the 2nd week of March. 2 pages, torn from a notebook, in pencil. Rosie, I've done something and I'm going to tell you what it is, because I'm not going to lie to you. Not you. I took it out of the safe in the sacristy. 4,000. Ma'am counts it on the 1st of the month, so we've got till Tuesday. I'm not proud of it. I'll pay it back out of what we make over there. I swear to God I will. I've worked it out. Be at the slip at 4 on Monday and don't bring much. I'll have the boat. I know what I am. I'd rather be that with you than good on my own here. She'd read it maybe 200 times. The part she couldn't stop reading wasn't the £4,000. It was don't bring much. Because she hadn't. She'd stood at the slip at 4 in the morning on a Monday in March with a canvas bag and everything she owned in it, in a wind you couldn't stand up straight in, for 2 hours and 40 minutes. And the town had spent 8 months saying she'd taken the money. The audit was set for the 12th of April. Bridie brought the paperwork round on a Sunday afternoon with a pot of soup and put both on the table together. They want the statements and the ledger and a letter from the 2 signatories, she said. You and me. Confirming the funds intact and always has been. Clara looked at the letter. It's a formality, Bridie said. Nobody's questioning anything. It's the board covering itself. And we signed to say, it's all there. It is all there. Bridie sat down and pulled her coat off her shoulders. £4,011 in the account since December. I printed it off. Clara looked at the sheet of paper. £4,011. Paid in cash, in a brown envelope, on the 9th of December, by a woman in a headscarf who asked the girl at the bank not to put a name on it, which was to say by Clara Vance, out of the entirety of what her husband had left her, over 4 visits so as not to be remarked upon. She had told nobody. She was never going to tell anybody. It was the single largest act of her life, and it existed nowhere except in her own head and in a bank's records under no name at all. Bridie, she said. And Clara opened her mouth to say it. She got as far as the shape of it. She had the whole thing arranged. The money wasn't there in November. I put it back myself. And I'll tell you where it went, and it was sitting in her chest, ready to come out, and what she said was, Bridie. And Bridie said, oh, before I forget. You're coal. I've told Michael to put you down for a full bag on the Thursday round, not the half, because you'll not get through a half now the Knights are still at it. Don't argue with me, it's the same money to him. She patted Clara's hand. You'd have sat there in a half bag till June and said nothing. Clara looked at her friend's hand on top of her own. Thanks, she said. And she signed the letter. Bridie put it in her bag and stayed 40 more minutes and talked about the roof. And when she'd gone, Clara sat at the table for a long time with the soup going cold. She had not lied to protect the parish. She could have told the truth, paid the money in, and let the parish have both. She lied because if it came out that Sean took it, then Sean was a boy who robbed his own mother's church and drowned running away, and there was a photograph in the porch with his hand up against the sun. And Clara Vance had one thing left in the world, and it was other people's faces when they said his name. That was the choice. She made it on a Sunday afternoon with a bowl of soup going cold in front of her. Everything after that was just the bill coming in. She lost the flat above the bakery on the 11th of April. 2 rooms, a window facing east, a radiator that worked. She'd paid $600 deposit out of an envelope kept behind the panel above the caravan sink for 14 months, £10 a week out of £8.50 an hour. He gave her back $400 and couldn't look at her while he did it. A decent man, and he couldn't look at her. You're leaving mid-term. There's costs. The cloth going round and round the counter, and it's been said to me that it wouldn't be proper. For the parish. By who? He didn't answer. Was it Bridie Gallagher? He kept wiping. I'm not leaving mid-term, Roisin said. I'm not leaving at all. Right, he said. Well, she got as far as the slip before her legs stopped working properly, and she sat down on the wet stone. Nuala found her there at 6:30. Because Nuala had gone looking, she didn't say anything. She sat down on the stone next to her, 62 years old with a bad hip, and took both of Roisin's hands and held them. They think I stole it, Roisin said. I know what they think. I've got the proof of it in my coat. I've had it 8 months. Nuala was quiet a moment. Then why've you not used it? And Roisin, who had asked herself that exact question every night since March, standing at the immersion heater with the letter in her hand, said, because it's his mother. Nuala looked out at the water. Aye, she said. It is. They met on the Tuesday, because Roisin walked into the sacristy after 5 o'clock Mass and closed the door, and Clara was putting the vestments away, and there was nobody else in the building. Mrs. Vance, I know who you are. I know you do. Clara went on folding. Say what you came to say. There's a letter. Sean wrote it to me on the Saturday. It says what he did with the money and what we were going to do. It's in his hand, and it's got the date on it. Clara's hands stopped. Then you've had it 8 months. Yes. And you've not used it. No. Why? Roisin didn't answer that, and Clara turned round and looked at her properly for the first time, the coat that was too thin, the hands cracked open across the knuckles, the boots. 21. I can't walk on the top road, Roisin said. Her voice didn't rise. That was what made it unbearable. When I go in for milk, there's a queue, and it goes quiet. At Christmas, somebody wrote on my door, and I scrubbed it off in the dark with a nail brush so nobody would see me doing it. Clara said nothing. I loved him. I'd have gone anywhere with him. I stood at that slip near on 3 hours, and I've never told a living soul. She swallowed. But they've made me the thief, Mrs. Vance, and I'm 21. And I'd like my name. The sacristy clock went on. If that letter is read, Clara said, there is no audit. There is no grant. The roof is condemned by November, and the church closes. And the church is the only warm building in this parish. And there are 80 people who eat out of that hall. I know. Do you know Deirdre Norton's 4 grandchildren get their tea there on a Thursday? I know that too. I've served it. Roisin's chin came up. I do the Thursdays. I've done the Thursdays for 2 years. Nobody talks to me while I do them, but I do them. And Clara, who knew every word of the letter by heart, who had found it folded in the spare oilskins in the shed 3 days after they brought her son up out of the water, who had read it standing in the dark with a torch in her teeth and put it back exactly where it was said. You've got a piece of paper a dead boy wrote when he was frightened. I've got a son. Which do you think this parish would rather have? Roisin looked at her for a long moment. You know it's true, she said. Don't you? Clara turned back to the vestments. I don't know anything about it. And Roisin Cleary stood in the sacristy of a church she'd served in for 2 years and understood, completely, that she was going to lose, not because she was wrong, but because there was no version of winning that didn't take a roof off 80 people and finish the woman standing in front of her. She said, "Right." Then she left and pulled the door to gently, because you don't slam a door in a church. The parish committee met on the third Thursday at 7. 9 people, plastic chairs, the ledger on the table. Bridie in the middle. Father Byrne to the side, a good man out of his depth. Clara at the end. Roisin asked to be heard, and Bridie said, in a pleasant voice, that she supposed there was no harm in it. Roisin stood up. "I took the £4,000 out of the sacristy safe," she said. The room went absolutely still. In November. I was doing the Thursdays, and I had a key to the hall, and I got into the sacristy, and I took it. I meant to pay it back, and I never did. And I spent some of it, and the rest is gone. Father Byrne started to say something. "I'd like it written down," Roisin said, "so the audit's clean. It wasn't the fund, and it wasn't the parish. It was me. And I'm going, so it's finished." She looked at nobody. She had worked out beforehand that she would look at nobody. "That's all," she said, and sat down. There was a silence, and then Bridie Gallagher said, quietly and with real feeling, "Well, I have to say I'm glad of it. Not glad, you know what I mean, glad of the honesty of it, at the end." And she reached over and patted Roisin's hand. Roisin looked down at the hand on top of hers. At the far end of the table, Clara Vance had not moved at all. She was sitting with her hands in her lap, looking at the wall above everyone's heads, and she stayed like that until it was over. They wrote it down. Father Byrne asked, gently, whether she'd like to talk about restitution. And Bridie said she thought the best restitution was a clean line under it, and everyone agreed, and the meeting moved on to the roof. At the caravan, Roisin took the letter out of her coat and looked at it for a while. "I'd rather be that with you than good on my own here." Then she folded it and put it in the bottom of the canvas bag, under everything, because she was not going to burn it, and she was not going to use it, and both of those were decisions she was making for good. She packed. It took 11 minutes. The bus went from the top of the Harbour Road at 6. Clara had been awake since 4, the way she was most days now. At 20 to 6, she put her coat on over her nightdress and walked up as far as the corner by the Chandlers and stood in the dark where she couldn't be seen from the stop. 2 people were waiting, Roisin with a canvas bag, and Nuala in a headscarf, arms folded, saying nothing. The bus came at 4 minutes past. Roisin picked up the bag. Nuala reached out and squeezed her arm, once, hard, and let go. Then the girl got on, and the bus went, and Nuala stood at the stop by herself for a good while before she turned and walked back down the hill. Clara stayed at the corner. At 8 she went to Mass. Afterwards Bridie found her at the door, the way she did. "Did you hear she went?" "I heard. 6 o'clock bus." Bridie fell into step beside her. "Well, it's a hard thing to say, but it's the best outcome we could have had, isn't it? The audit'll go through clean now. Byrne's sending the letter today. And I'll tell you the other thing." Bridie stopped walking and took Clara's hand in both of hers, and her eyes were wet. "Your Sean's name is clean. That's the thing I keep coming back to. Whatever else, that girl told the truth in the end, and your boy's name is clean. And he can be what he was." Clara looked at her. "You've been carrying that 8 months, Bridie said. You can put it down now." Then she kissed Clara's cheek and went off up the road to open the hall. And Clara Vance stood on the church path in the wet morning with her friend's blessing on her face, having got exactly and completely everything she had decided to want on a Sunday afternoon, with a bowl of soup going cold in front of her. She went home. She made tea. She didn't drink. The heater had clicked off at 10 the night before, and the kitchen was cold enough to see her breath in. She sat down at the table in her coat and took the tin box out from under the dresser. The death notice, her mother's rosary, the blue enamel medal on its broken cord. She held it in her palm, face up, the way she had held it most nights for 8 months. St. Christopher, chalky blue at the edges from 24 years against a boy's skin. She thought about the slip at 4 in the morning in March. 3 hours in that wind. A canvas bag with everything in it. Don't bring much. And she turned it over. She had never turned it over. In 8 months, she had never once turned it over. And she could not have told anybody why, and she turned it over now in a cold kitchen at 9:20 in the morning. Scratched into the back of the enamel with something sharp, badly. The way you do it with a nail on a boat with your thumb over it to keep it steady. R.C. Clara Vance sat very still. She did not cry. That came later, and it came at the wrong time. In the shop, over nothing. She sat in the cold with the medal flat in her open hand, and she understood completely, with no part of it left over, that the girl she had just let this parish run out onto a bus was the only person her son had ever actually loved, and that her boy's clean name, and the roof, and the £12,000 and 80 pensioners warm on a Tuesday, and Bridie Gallagher's wet eyes on the church path, had all of them been bought with one 21-year-old who scrubbed her own door in the dark so nobody would see her doing it. Outside, the harbour road was quiet. The bus was long gone. There would be another at 6 the next morning, and one the morning after that, going the same way. Clara looked at the 2 letters scratched in the blue. She did not go after her. She closed her hand over the metal.
If this story made you think, subscribe. The next one goes even deeper.